What's up, guys? Big updates from Celsius Network. The first thing I want to cover right here, bankrupt crypto lender Celsius receives U.S. grand jury subpoena. This is from Bloomberg. Then I'm going to cover a lot of motions that have come in through Stretto. The first couple are objections to the approval of bidding on the assets and selling the assets. So the first one is from Vermont. Then we have the U.S. trustee also objecting to the bidding of the assets. Then we have Daniel Frischberg's omnibus objection to bidding of the assets. Then we have Emmanuel Herman also saying the same thing. Then we have the Texas State Securities Board also objecting to the bidding of the assets. Then we have this conglomeration of states you can see here, Alabama, Arkansas, California, etc., all objecting to the approval of the bidding. Next, I'm going to talk about the updated bid deadline. So right now it moved from October 17th to November 2nd for the final bid deadline. So everything kind of got pushed out. Then I'm going to talk about the UCC wanting to approve the bidding procedures. So they are saying, no, we want this bidding to go through, and they have some reasons for that. Next, an article from Daniel Frischberg talking about why Celsius needs to significantly cut cost because they are burning through cash very, very quickly. Then another story from Daniel Frischberg talking about why he thinks there needs to be insider clawbacks. Next, take a look at a story from Emmanuel Herman saying that Alex basically warned people at Consensus, which was a conference that took place a day before they froze withdrawals, that Celsius was in trouble. Next, take a look at the UCC wanting to object to an appointment of an official preferred equity committee, and also Kirkland and the debtors want the same thing. Next, I'm going to take a look at a story that David Adler, the lawyer, breaks down, talking about the FTC, and this is way above my pay grade, but I will talk about exactly what he means and what this could mean for us and the estate. And finally, I'll end with some tweets from Simon Dixon talking about some of the motions I'm talking about today, about why there needs to be cohesiveness in a recovery plan. So the first story, basically, the SEC, the CFTC, and the FTC have also sent inquiries to Celsius. So what Simon Dixon said about this article from Bloomberg about all these agencies inquiring is that he says, I honestly don't think a standalone reorganization is possible anymore. And he obviously is covering his path forward in his YouTube videos, which I am trying to get to cover as well. So let's take a look at some of these objections. So Vermont starts out by objecting for the motion for an order approving bid procedures. Now, I'm just going to go through their objection because a lot of the other objections from different states and different regulatory boards are kind of similar. So Vermont said that this request is premature and the motion raises issues similar to those created by the motion to sell stablecoins, which was also objected to by Vermont, and motions relative to custody and withhold accounts. So they start out by saying that at least 40 states have been looking into Celsius about concerns about potential unregistered securities, mismanagement, securities fraud, and market manipulation. But what they're saying is that the crypto has not yet been determined by the court and will be addressed in at least part by the examiner's report, but that has not been completed. Basically, who owns the crypto? Is it our crypto, or is it technically owned by the estate? They also say the ownership of custody and withhold accounts likely remain unresolved. So basically, how can you start selling assets and getting bids on assets when there's so much still that is unresolved and that we don't know? They also say that insiders withdrew nearly $18 million in crypto assets during the weeks just before the freeze. Some or all of those withdrawals essentially could become property of the estate. They talk about ownership and status of the crypto assets, again, remain unclear. So that is essentially Vermont's argument. It's too soon to be selling these assets and having people and companies bid on these assets. And now take a look at the U.S. trustee, what they have to say about it as well. He says this motion should be denied for a couple of reasons. The bidding procedure should not be approved until and unless it is known what specific assets are to be sold. I mean, basic questions here. Now, I'm not going to go through all of it, but again, there's a lot of people saying, hey, we should not be doing this right now. And I think a lot of creditors agree because we would prefer a reorganization, most likely, with some equity and not just to be sold off to companies, especially at the bottom of a bear market. Here, Daniel Frischberg, who has been very, very vocal as a creditor, written a lot of letters to the judge, he also objects to this motion as well. He says the debtors are requesting to effectively sell any and all assets that they have possession of before the examiner's report is set to come out. So Daniel agrees with Vermont, saying that the ownership and title of the crypto assets still remain unclear. And Emmanuel Herman also agrees to this objection to bid on the assets as well. So he is in charge of the unofficial steering committee, and essentially he says that they are all united in wanting a restructuring with a plan that includes an equity interest in a new company, kind of like what Simon is talking about, and are united in opposing predatory bids that lock in a substantial haircut. He said that the steering committee members believe that the current bidding procedures are not creative enough and are too rushed to be in the best interests of the creditors. So he is saying, again, we need some time, we need the examiner to come out with their report, we need more information, and we don't want to feel like we are being rushed to make a massive decision here. He says here, I have spoken with multiple potential bidders who informed me that they are scared to bid while issues of property of the estate is unknown, while creditor groups are fighting with 40 or more state investigations, and while questions of how far back Celsius was insolvent and what that might mean for clawbacks hang over the case. Now, this is a great paragraph. Basically, bidders are saying, hey, we don't want to bid. So essentially, the people who could bid the most money to get us the most money for our assets, a lot of these people, a lot of these really intelligent investors, they're scared. They don't want to bid because there's all of these unknowns that could affect the asset that they purchase at a later date. It's not a good time to be selling these assets, he's saying. And then he says the timeline of bidding should be pushed back. And taking a look at the next story, the Texas State Securities Board also is objecting to the sale and bidding of assets, as well as this group of states. We have Alabama, Arkansas, California, the District of Columbia, Hawaii, Maine, Missouri, New York, North Dakota, and Oklahoma. Collectively, the coordinated states are also objecting to the approval of bidding procedures, etc., etc. We've got a lot of people saying they don't want it, but here is an updated date timeline. Basically, the original date and timeline for a final bid was October 17th. That is like 3 days. So they moved that out about 2 weeks or so. They pushed some auctions out. They basically pushed everything out, I would say, 2 weeks. So I don't know why they're doing this, but apparently maybe they are listening to us, or they do agree that we need more time. But here we have the UCC saying that they want the approval of the bidding procedures to continue. So here it says the committee, which is the only fiduciary solely focused on the interests of and maximizing recoveries of account holders. So they're saying, hey, we are looking out for the depositor's best interest, and they think that the involvement of external investors can help everybody essentially get the most money back. And the UCC again says, and I'm summarizing this a lot, they are looking at the option that most likely maximizes the value of the depositor's states. So we have a lot of different opinions here about what the proper course of action should be. And it is very interesting that the UCC is in opposition to basically everybody else. The Texas State Security Boards, Vermont, all these other states, they're saying it's not time, but the UCC is like, it is time. Let's take a look at this story. Daniel Frischberg saying, we need to cut costs immediately. Celsius needs to cut costs a ton before, here it says they run out of cash before the end of the calendar year. They are running a deficit of approximately $1.5 million per day. That's crazy. I had no idea it was that much. And he is extremely concerned that this entire bankruptcy is just a way for the executives at Celsius to continue paying themselves lavish salaries and bonuses to continue to spend the depositor money. So this guy does not hold his punches. He is going full force. He says that they have to stop paying any and all bonuses and unnecessary benefits, perks, and rewards. There's no point in doing that now. The company is not really doing anything, he's saying, and nobody should be getting a bonus at the moment, which I completely agree with. He says that the debtors should be ordered to compile an anonymized list of all of their employees and contractors, including a person's job title and their total salary and compensation. He says to get rid of any duplicate positions or roles that are no longer applicable, like those in the loan and borrow programs, since again, they're no longer operating. He says the majority of the personnel working in the EARN program should also leave. People working with opening accounts, advertising, and PR should also be let go. Anybody working to deploy crypto should be fired. Anyone working in risk management should probably be fired as well. Anyone in the regulatory compliance department needs to leave as well. It's pretty funny. He's just going after it. He says cuts to human resources. Alex needs to leave, and especially he needs to leave as the position as a director on a board, which which he says still ends up controlling the staked ETH that the debtors hold. He says there's no reason anybody at this bankrupt company should be making $30,000 a week. I completely agree. So next, Daniel Frischberg said there needs to be a motion to compel insider clawbacks. He says that almost everyone can agree that insiders and anyone with non-public knowledge of the insolvency or upcoming closure of withdrawals should be forced to return the assets and any and all interest, gains, and profits made from the assets. In addition, insiders should compensate the estate for any costs associated with pursuing them for the preferential payments. He's talking about the dissipation of funds and saying that there's some clear evidence that at least some of the funds have already been dissipated. He's saying that Cell Token have been moved into wallets, which have been used to sell it through decentralized exchanges. He talks about potential embezzlement. He says that wallets linked to Alex Mashinsky are selling large amounts of Cell tokens. He also educates the court on Monero and privacy coins, saying essentially there are things called atomic swaps, which would be completely untraceable, and you can really launder and hide a lot of money. And he says it is imperative that insider assets are retrieved as soon as possible, because with crypto, it is possible to hide billions of dollars worth of assets in a matter of minutes, which is true. He also says that Alex may leave the country. He has Israeli citizenship and he may flee because Israel does not extradite their own citizens. He also says NFTs could have been used to launder money, and also USA Strong, which was Chrissy's company, could have been a front for money laundering and should be looked into. Take a look at the next story really quick from Emmanuel Herman, basically saying that at Consensus, which was a conference that took place June 9th to 12th, Alex said that Celsius was in trouble and that based upon these warnings, customer-made withdrawals. So what he wants is that before any customer is able to withdraw funds preferentially, regardless of the size, that they have to certify under penalty of perjury that they had no inside non-public info that Celsius was basically going under. So on July 5th of this year, somebody says, what if I told you that Alex was telling people Celsius was in trouble during Consensus, which happened to be a day before they shut down withdrawals? Wow, that would be pretty crazy. So next we have two objections, one coming from the UCC and one coming from the debtors themselves, objecting to the appointment of an official preferred equity committee. Now, this is good for us. Essentially, this equity committee would want to get paid out before the unsecured creditors, which is us. So I'm not going to go too much into this, but we have at least what looks like on the surface, the UCC and the debtors on the side of the creditors. So the final story I want to talk about before I end this video, the FTC and the debtors want to extend the deadline for filing a non-dischargeability complaint, which I was like, what the hell does that mean? So David Adler talks a little bit about it. Celsius Loans is like, can you translate this for us, please? And it says it means the FTC is looking to declare a debt owed by Celsius to it as not dischargeable. And he says this is a big deal. He says you don't see government agencies taking action in Chapter 11 to declare debts non-dischargeable. David Adler says that virtually every debt is dischargeable in Chapter 11. He says there is something serious going on here. I can't tell if the FTC is claiming that Celsius obtained money under false pretenses or fraud, and whether this assertion is by the FTC on its own or on behalf of customers. He says if the debt is non-dischargeable, there is no Celsius 2.0, i.e. there is no standalone recovery plan. And Simon Dixon is saying that the UCC is fighting to get bidding process updated that would allow for the type of structure we have been covering in my video series. He says we need to unify around a one creditor-led plan and fit it into the bidding proceeds to win. He says we have to play the right game and win for the creditors, as they want nothing to get in the way. Basically, Kirkland does not want loans, custody, withhold, earn stables to be fighting. They need to all be playing on the same page, which Simon did cover in his video. All right, guys, that was a lot of information. I just wanted to cover everything, keep you guys up to date. Hope this was helpful. Till next time, guys, talk with you soon, and bye for now.